Tuesday. This is the Triad ISSA Security Summit. This is going on from Tuesday to Thursday this week, and we have lots of exciting talks. I'll also say most of our talks we're featuring information security professionals in the Triad, and so I'm really excited to hear from a lot of these security professionals, security peers. I think, Mitch, I can say security celebrities in the Triad. We have a couple of links that will be posted in the chat section shortly. We'll have a link to the schedule of this conference, which almost every part of this conference will be virtual. So you can join it. We all hate to admit to this, but many of us, we have work going on, we have jobs to do, but I'm devoting a lot of attention, and hopefully you will as well, to these talks. And if you've got to jump in and out of work, we understand that's one of the advantages to being virtual. But Thursday evening, we are having an in-person social event at Segra's office, which is over, if you're familiar with the area, it's near the Palladium in the High Point, Kernersville area. And we would love to have you join us. We will be dropping in the chat section a link to register for that. We need people to RSVP, so Segra has a seat for everyone, but there will be drinks and appetizers. And I don't know about you all, but I've missed a lot of the in-person social gatherings. So if you're comfortable doing that, please come out and join us. It's going to be a good time on Thursday evening at 5 p.m. And then, of course, if you haven't joined us before, we would love to have you at our Triad chapter events. And we meet at least monthly, and we send out information on our LinkedIn page and also by email. We will post in the chat a link to join our email list if you're not on that. We try not to spam you too awful much, but I'll have that posted here shortly. Anyway, without further ado, Mitch, thank you so much for joining us today. This is Mitch Cyrus, and we're very, very excited to have you. Take it away.
All right, thank you very much. Let me get my desktop through here and make sure we're sharing correctly. All right, is everyone able to see everything?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So I appreciate being invited. And thanks. I'm honored to be able to lead the thing off. Either that or terrified. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I did to irritate Evelyn so much that she decided to throw me out here right off the bat. Probably because I wasn't able to talk last year. So it's kind of, yeah. Okay, we'll deal with it. We'll talk on some more of this stuff and how I'm going to get even on Thursday. So, and actually this topic, it was funny because when Evelyn approached me on a topic, she was like, "Would we just like to be able to speak?" I said, "Okay, well, give me a day or two. Let me think about a topic." And she came back with the, "Well, you know what? Yeah, something like maybe you're a CISO. Now what?" And I'm like, "Wow, okay, yeah, I think I can handle that." So let's kind of get into it. It's kind of a lot of the stuff going on now, and with everything that's happening in the world right now, and especially in the world of cybersecurity, it's getting a lot more recognition. It's a lot more stuff is coming in. So, what's it like to be one? And let me again clarify right off the bat what a CISO is, because I imagine there's at least one or two people know they're saying, "Wait a second, I've seen your signature. That's not what it is." No, I have two different titles on my thing. One of them is what I get to present to everyone. It's called Information Security Officer, which is the same thing. And then the other one we have in Honda, we have what's called a secret title on the stuff. It's what HR assigns to you, which really has no semblance to anything whatsoever, but that's what large Japanese manufacturing plants do. So yes, welcome to your new position. You will find throughout this, I love stupid memes. So, get over it. That's going to happen in here. Be a CISO, they said. It'll be fun, they say. Now, let's get right off the bat. There are some disclaimers through here. First of all, every comment made by me represents my warped viewpoints and do not represent the opinions of Honda Aircraft, Honda Motors, ISSA, ISC Squared, or any reputable recruiter. The anecdotes shared here may not necessarily, probably they won't, represent what you may encounter in your own journey. because I'm going to be very honest here. I've gone through a lot of this stuff over the years, and every person I see that heads up a security department has a totally different story. And 2 years ago, or actually last year, I was invited to the RSA conference. They had a CISO boot camp. I was really impressed with the people there. It was like 50 people were invited. We had everything from someone who's had, one or two person departments, all the way up to people that had hundreds of people working on them for major banks. And there's a lot of different stories there. I'll try and relate some of them that they have, but the bottom line is, as you are trying to work on your voyage in your career journey, some of the stuff is going to be similar, some of it's going to be totally different. As I say, your mileage may vary. And then finally, this may result in headaches, stomach cramps, blurred vision, reduction in IQ points, lost sleep, growing cynicism towards the world in general, and kissing goodbye to your social life if you get this job. And finally, I do not accept any responsibility if, by using this advice and techniques described here, you find yourself working as a greeter in Walmart. Right off the bat, why would you want to be a CISO? Money, power, and fame. Or you're just a masochist. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of being a CISO. The good, hey, there's the money. Everyone sees this. We're all security professionals. We all read the things. And then we always wonder, why the hell this isn't us getting this type of money? Because then that's where they're going. I just actually looked these up a couple of days ago to see how much has changed lately. And right now I'm seeing these people that are Fortune 100 CISOs getting $2 million a year packages. And even if you're in the top 500, which by the way, Honda aircraft is not. Honda may be, I don't know the stuff there, the worldwide stuff, but no, Honda aircraft isn't. But if you're in the Fortune 500, you're averaging over $500,000 a year. And nationwide average is 174 for a CISO. Now, also keep in mind at that 174 number, that is a lot of people in Silicon Valley, a lot of people in Washington, D.C. area, a lot of people in the Northeast corridor. So, we know that 174 there can often be, if they're making that much, that's about 110 here. So what's the bad? Your average tenure of a CISO is still between 18 to 26 months. And it just saw a stat yesterday saying that of these Fortune 500 CISOs, almost a quarter of them have only been on the job for a year or less. Now, does that mean, what does that really mean? Really, it means that let me go back a little bit. Really what it means is a lot of them get fired quickly if one little thing goes wrong. Or on the other hand, they leave because there's a lot of poaching from one place to the other. And I think many of us here can attest to how many calls we get from recruiters, how many things we get there. It's, to me, if I don't get at least 2 emails a week, I'm kind of wondering if I've, didn't use deodorant that week or something. But that's just how it goes on the poaching here. On the other hand, I have no desire to go to work in California or Austin, Texas, or anything else. What's the ugly? If you're aspiring to be a CISO, right now, it's a case that education and experience count. I happened to go through, when I was going through this, I looked through my LinkedIn accounts, and a lot of people in the area and also around the world I've met in other places. I've got 23 connections there that I know are what I would consider the head, the person with the ultimate responsibility at theirs. And of those, I did a little survey on that. 3 of them are at PhD levels. 14 of them have master's degrees. 4 of them have bachelor's degrees, and only 2 out of all of them have an associate's or less. And it's like, wow, that's hard to say. It's really interesting there. And the average experience of all of them just in cybersecurity is 18 and a half years. Now, that's ugly, but I think there's a silver lining to that as we see everything changing, because every time we get these ransomware news breaks out, every time something else comes in for a major hacker doing stuff, it raises the profile. There are more jobs opening up, there's more demand. And what you're really seeing is we got a lot of old people that are going to be aging out soon. Wayne has had put up with me talking some of the stuff. Yeah, I come right out and admit I'm at a point that I'm
I'd
on
be
a
like, oh, tell me why. So yeah, I'm always.
Oh, sorry. I'm on a 3 or 4 year plan before I will probably be looking for my cushy consulting job and leaving the rest apply. So there's over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see so many of the people that are in charge of cybersecurity for companies aging out and moving on to other things. So there are going to be a lot of openings there. And I think as we're going through that, you're going to see some of these education demands and everything start to slack up a little bit, and they're going to start going there. And the other advantage as you're getting into it is that there's a lot of companies that are going to be introducing a CISO for the very first time. So what is a CISO? One of my favorite names means Chief Information or Sacrifice Officer. Yep, that's it. But your titles are going to vary. You're going to have some of them have the actual CISO title, some of them get a VP, a lot of other things. You could be called director of security, could be head of security, could be called a manager, could be called a security lead. I will come right out now and say most of your newer companies are going to be hiring somebody right off the bat. They aren't going to call them a CISO because they don't want to pay that much money. They don't know for certain what they're getting yet. As I started out in the first one, it's that wasn't my title. It was as a manager through there. The bottom line for what I really call as a CISO is who's the person whose bacon is on the line when the stuff hits the fan. And when I went through a recruiting process, and actually even when I went to Honda, I had one of the recruiters said, are you hung up on titles? I'm like, look, I don't care really what the title is. Here's what I want. If somebody calls the switchboard and says, I need to immediately talk to whoever is in charge of cybersecurity, that call goes to me. How they do the rest of it, I don't care. So as we look at it now, what are the challenges for CISOs now? Other than another one of my favorite memes, it's like, well, it's great. Hey, we got phished, budget's cut in half, website crashed, but we passed the security audit. You would be really surprised and depressed on how many companies I've ran across that consider passing a security audit to be the most important thing you're doing. And that's just some things I'm going to talk about culture later on. We'll just have to get used to it. That is part of it there. But we got a lot of challenges right now. First one is totally obvious. All the new ransomware and all the frequency of attacks on that. It's every time, and you get used to that, is that every time something else hits the paper, all of a sudden I'm getting a call from my boss, getting a call from his boss saying, what's going on? Is this going to impact us? That's the biggest rush right now. There's just so much more coming in and so many new attack vectors coming in and so much more attention on the position. How are we going to handle it? Biggest challenges when you're in charge of staff there is a difficulty in hiring and retaining cybersecurity talent. Now, Latik's going to be talking, I think, next on the stuff on the job prospects and everything like that. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking on that and steal any of his thunder on that. But it is difficult. It's difficult to hire. I had a position once stay open for almost a year before I was able to hire. But I will talk a little bit about retaining talent. That is hard. It's for everyone through there because, as I was mentioned before, all the poaching that goes on, and just trying to keep people engaged. And my little hints for that is if you have the point that you have people working for you on that, is you've got to be the champion for them. You've got to be able to encourage them to grow in their position, to learn new things. Do not take people that are there and say, hey, look, you're just a SOC analyst. I don't want you worrying about GRC. Or I don't want you worrying about learning stuff on the firewall or anything. Your job is just doing that. That's a person who's going to leave in a few months if you're that way. Let them get the training they need, encourage them to expand, and try to, and more than anything else, do not micromanage, because there's just too many jobs out there available. And if you've got a good one working for you, believe me, if something goes wrong and you tick them off too much, they can get a new job by tomorrow. One of the challenges is keeping the business safe in the remote workplace world. We had, like everyone else, March of last year, I know the date, it's embedded in my mind, March 13th, get called in saying, okay, we are now going from the fact that we do not allow remote work. I know there's sometimes you can VPN and check your email or do a couple things if you need to off hours, but you do not work off site. To, oh, wait, we have to, by next week, we have to have 700 people working remotely. Great. And that's our real world. How do we keep them safe from there? Because now you're looking at a whole nother set of threat vectors under there. And, we're coming out of a pandemic now, but guess what? Remote work is not going away, and neither are the threats. There's going to be organizational issues for any of them. I'll touch briefly on that a little bit later. It's just that every organization you have is going to be set up differently. And as I've talked in a few conversations I've had before, your field that you're in is going to dictate some of your stuff there, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. If you're in a highly regulated business like a bank or healthcare, yeah, you're going to have a lot of specific rules set up for that, for HIPAA, for GLBA. If you're in manufacturing, whole nother world, because the cybersecurity is going to be based on their tolerance for risk, because there is no one coming out and telling us that you have to have these set of controls in. It's just a matter of like, okay, if you don't have them in and you get hacked, what are you going to feel like when you have to get your name in the paper like Garmin did or Colonial Pipeline, having to pay the ransom and you're damage to your reputation? Luckily at Honda Aircraft, Japanese company, again, I will go into that, reputation means a lot. So they are a lot more cognizant of that and work well with me, I will say. And then we have human error. And another one on there, because no matter how much stuff you get everything set up, and some idiot has clicked on the email despite how many times you told them not to. And then finally, your budget constraints. So that's what we have to look at, as we're trying to go through there. A little bit of snarkiness coming up, I will say, just give you forewarned, qualifications for a CISO. And I'm sure many of you, and I always recommend going to places like Simply Hired, Indeed, the jobs that get posted on LinkedIn, and you look through them when you get some stuff, and it's like, okay, for a CISO or a VP or some of the higher levels there, it's like, wow, really? They're wanting, yeah, we want the master's degree. We prefer you have the PhD, preferably from an Ivy League school or Stanford. Okay, we'll accept MIT if nothing else. And oh, by the way, a law degree with especially in privacy would be great. Plus, we want to have your 25 years experience in information security and 15 years presenting to the board. Oh yeah, could you have a little bit of Big Four consulting experience too? And we want all of these certifications on there, not just one or two, give them all. And while you're doing it, can you please be able to tune our IPS and our firewalls for us? And we want you to be in charge of doing the pen tests as well. Also on the GRC side, from memory, you should be able to recite 90% of the NIST cybersecurity framework or PCI DSS, HIPAA, and all that. And if you get blood out of a turnip, that would be great. Oh yeah, other duties as required. So obviously, that's a little bit of the extreme, but it's not necessarily that far off. It's a slight exaggeration to explain what a problem is and explain why it is that so many of these jobs, another study I saw through Gartner or whatever, saying that when you get these high-level CISO jobs, they stay open for a year or more because they are at the HR level, they don't know how to recruit for it, and they still set up this high expectations. And then they, realize after about a year, it's like, oh, I guess we actually have to look for something a little more practical. But again, everyone is different on how they get to where they're at. For me, I can just really kind of give you my example because I'm probably a little unique, but you talk to others and maybe not so much. I have 35 years or something into IT in general, starting off as a Fortran 77 programmer, and a CAD CAM system. Um, yeah, and believe it or not, when I learned Fortran, it was in college and it was using punch cards. Now, by the time I actually got out of college, they didn't use those anymore, so I'm not that ancient. But that's where I started. And I've went up through in IT was through systems analyst, business analyst, systems engineer through Novell networking. Got into the management side because I took a unique aspect on my education as well and did not obtain my bachelor's degree until I was 35 years old. Once I got that, went into project management and as a IT manager, which included the business, you know, disaster recovery, business continuity. And that experience is what allowed me to make a jump over to the information security management side. And it was Silk Road Technology. Those of you that know it around here, it's a small software as a service company on human resources software. When I was hired in, it was as a infrastructure manager slash security. Within 6 months, it was like, okay, that's not going to work. There's too much to do here. You got to just concentrate on security, which didn't bother me at all whatsoever. And, you know, spent 8 years there. Then went to Honda Aircraft 6 years ago and been running that. I think what you see is what's missing on mine is that prior to I had no InfoSec experience per se before getting the management side of it. And I've seen a few others that do that. That's getting a lot rarer now, but that's how it was because it was just a growing field on that. DR and BCP is kind of part of it, and that's where it got in. What attracted me, what attracted Silk Road to me, or me to Silk Road, was the fact they were trying to get policies and procedures written up and everything, and they needed somebody who had experience within that. So let's skip what I'd said before on the snarkiness on what's needed, and let's talk about what you really do need if you're trying to work towards in this career path. First and foremost, the communication skills have to be there. That to me is the single most important thing there. You've got to be able to speak to all the business units and establish consensus. You have got to be able to create presentations to senior leadership and board of directors. So if you were the type of person who thinks that, you know, writing up things and doing a PowerPoint presentation is the worst thing in the world, this may not be a career path for you. You've got to be able to talk to all the company users. You have to be able to explain why you're taking things away from them. When I was at Silk Road, and this is the kind of the main reason why I did leave Silk Road. It's a great company, but my wife also works there, and she's an HR manager, and also our youngest son works there. So as a risk professional, it's kind of like, wait a second, we have pretty much a whole household tied into this one small company who may get gobbled up by somebody, may decide in a year or so they aren't even there. Is that really a smart risk thing to do? Nope. Well, which one of us needs to leave? Where is it easier to find another job if you need one, a security professional or an HR professional? So, and oh, by the way, 6 years later, my wife is still there. They're going fine, but no regrets on to that. But when we were at Silk Road, my wife was the good Cyrus. She was the one who was in charge of benefits, and we all people, yes, here's what you're getting for your health coverage. Here's your vacations. Here's all the good stuff there. I was the bad Cyrus. I was the one that said, nope, you can't do that. No, oh God, no, you can't do that. Oh, your password. You want your password to be 6 characters? I don't think so. And that's going on in this stuff here. And you've got to be able to communicate to the users. You've got to be able to tell them why we're restricting stuff, why we're implementing DLP. It's not because of you in general. It's just because we have to protect the company. Why are we doing multi-factor authentication now? Yes, it's a pain. Yes, it's harder than what it used to be. I'm sorry, but it's for the good of the company. You also have to be able to talk to your suppliers, your business partners, your customers. right now, it's one of the things going on with the IoT stuff is, and we're starting to get it, is trying to say, convince your customers, yeah, we have a safe product. We have, you're not gonna have your refrigerator hacked. There was always that story about how somebody hacked one of those smart refrigerators at Lowe's or whatever that had the internet on the TV on the refrigerator, and somebody managed to hack it and was playing Pornhub while it was on. So that's the stuff there. I love right now with the IoT stuff that's coming in. I have fun with the aircraft because I've invented this little scenario. I think it's public knowledge now that Tom Cruise owns a Honda jet. It's a cool thing there. So I make up this little scenario in my mind, and maybe I'll sell it to Hollywood or something, that, one of these days he's going to take, what happens if he takes off from his private little airport in LA and somebody's directing a beam at bouncing something off the satellite dish, takes over the autopilot, forces the plane to cross over and land in some airstrip in Mexico, and he's kidnapped. That would not look good with a Honda. So let's just try and figure out how to make sure we have everything safe there. So you got to be able to communicate to the people and talk them down from the ledge as well. You do have to have your writing skills. You're going to be writing policies, position papers, training documents. You really do need to understand the governance, risk, and compliance aspects of it. Particularly, you've got to look at your particular field and say what's needed, what's required, what we have to be in compliance to. And lately, understanding privacy and how it ties to cybersecurity and how it differs. To everyone here who's thinking of getting into this path, I tell you right now to go start learning GDPR. If it's like, oh, wait a second, we don't necessarily do business in Europe and everything. It's like, well, the privacy regulation there is very important, and it's being adopted. California already for the CCPA. Just seeing that Colorado and Washington State are also instituting their own privacy regulations there. So you really need to understand how that works as well. But at the same time, don't lose sight of the technical knowledge you have. And for certifications, CISSP or CISM. I really do think if you're going there, I don't think you need to have all of the ones through there. I only have the CISSP at this point. I made a choice to not necessarily go after CISM just yet, because I figure, I think 14 years heading up a place should kind of show that I know what I'm doing. And if not, I'll just BS my way through it. And again, if you're in a smaller department, that may not even be necessary right off the bat either. I did not have my CISSP when I first went to work at Silk Road, but I did within 3 years. Consider obtaining a master's degree if you don't already have one. I think, again, with mine, I was a little bit older than what some of them were that went up there. I felt at the time I needed to make the choice of, do I go after the CISSP or go after the master's? For myself personally, the CISSP was a better choice, but you may be different on that. Again, depends on the size of the company you want to work for. If you want to, aspire to be working for a large company, have 15, 20, 40 people working for you, they're probably going to expect to get that master's degree. If you're going to content to work for a smaller one and everything, then no, it's not going to be a requirement. So stuff that you can do then to start preparing you for that. And I imagine Wayne can kind of relate a little bit to some of that look on that meme there. So it's like, yeah, wait a second, we need something. I need to present something to the boss. Yeah, kiss the rest of your day goodbye. What can you do? If your role is predominantly technical, start working on the GRC side. Start learning the governance, risk, and compliance. Flip it there. If you're right now more of a compliance analyst, take an introductory course on the technology used. No, I'm not expecting that you're going to be an expert on any of this stuff, but at least understand it. Go through, and it's something. It's like what I have right now. I've brought in a person to kind of handle the security side of things. This is his first security job, and he's handling it over the like the laptops, handling the Microsoft Defender, some of the vulnerability testing and scanning. But I've asked him to start learning, going through just a basic course in networking, understand the whole TCP/IP aspect and all the layers on that, and start learning that side of thing. just so you can grow into it, just so you can talk to your people and have them, not walk away from every conversation you have with them saying, God, this idiot knows nothing. They may still do it anyway to me, I don't know, but we've been able to fake it through so far. Consider taking the CISM boot camp or study guides. The study guide they have that you can order, I think it's about $100, is really, I would recommend as a good start to see if this whole thing is for you. I went through that with our senior engineer. That was how we kind of went with him. It's like, here, if you're thinking about looking for CISM and going this thing, get this book, start reading it. And I know it's set for, I think, almost over a year on his desk, because he would look at it as like, God, this really has nothing to do with what I do on my daily basis. I don't know. But after about a year or so that he just kind of picked through it, he finally decided, no, this is something I really like to be able to do. And early this year, he went ahead and took the test, and he is now a CISM. Take a class on project management. If you have never dealt with the stuff there, I think outside of a strict security type of classes and training, project management, understanding the concept of that is something that's going to help you out so much in your career. Volunteer to assist your boss on presentations and documentation. Believe me, I would never turn down any help on that. And it kind of gives you an idea of what has to go on at that level, and how many times you'll see, because what you find out is you start working on a presentation and you got to develop a thick skin on that, because get the presentation, I turn into my boss, and it comes back looking like I'm in freshman English again with how much it's been marked up. It's like, oh, okay, you've got to understand how to make this stuff done. Participate as much as you can in all the security audits. Even if it's, if your area is like, wait a second, I'm just handling the network side of things, why should I care about some of this policy stuff or whatever? At least understand it. You really need to have, what they used to complain about with the CISSP test. It's a mile wide and an inch deep, but you've got to have that breadth. Attend sessions like this, the ISSA, ISC squared ones, any of the local security meetings, and join InfraGard. It is a great source of information. I learn so much every time I go down to one of those. I'm really hoping that they start being able to do the in-person stuff again later this year. If you have an opportunity to either go to Charlotte or go to Raleigh and listen in on one of those things, it's fascinating. I know one of the last ones they had, it was before the pandemic, so everything changed here, but it was Secret Service, FBI, and local law enforcement all was there talking about the security methods they were using to protect the city of Charlotte during the Republican National Convention of 2020. So it's some really great stuff to have there. And finally, volunteer to teach security awareness. And sometimes at work, I mean, everything's, all the stuff's virtual training now, all the stuff you're on your learning management system, all that. But I really still think there's a key place for in-person one-on-one training or teaching a group of 15 or 20 people. And as you learn, especially those of you that have been in security for a while, volunteer at a school, at a church, at a senior citizen place. Go to the Senior Citizen Center and try and teach them a little bit, on how to stay safe and secure online. You can go to the ISC Square stuff and get the safe and secure online things they have with Garfield, and go to school on that. That will get you used to public speaking. It'll get your name out there, and it is really something that is badly needed in our community. So, okay, so you get through all this fun stuff. You've managed to talk your way into getting an interview. You have coming up for a CISO role. What should you be doing? Get ready for the standard barrage of the gotcha questions. It's standard HR stuff. I'm allowed to make fun of that since my wife is one, particularly because she can't hear what I'm saying right now and will not come pounding in my door and hitting me over the head. So, but you know what they're going to do. You're going to have to explain your management style. How do you operate in a crisis? That is actually a question that you often get that you really want to take advantage of. I worked for Brian Platts at Silk Road. He's pretty well known in this area. He was the COO there. It's very entrepreneurial, great great leader. And he gave me the greatest advice I ever had early in my career there that I have stuck with ever since. And because I can get a little excitable and all the other stuff on that, I get very passionate about the stuff there. But when he asked me, he said, here's what you have to be in a crisis and something comes in there. It says, you absolutely must be the calmest person in the room. And I have carried that with me ever since. I can goof around, I can be funny, I can snark at everything in the world, but when something really blows up, and we've had that a few times through there, totally take emotion out of it, totally try and calm down, work the problem. So you have to be able to also give them examples of your communications and collaboration skills and be able to answer that, that final thing, why should we hire you? Practice that one. There's no right answer to that one. It's going to have to be what your gut feel is. But while you're there, very, very important, be prepared to ask them some hard questions. I had a very, I described what it was like when I decided I needed to go somewhere else from Silk Road. What that gave me, though, was the time to really make sure that I was getting the right position to leave them. And it ended up being a 2.5-year job search. And during which time I turned down several offers, or actually turned down 3 different offers. And there was at least 8 other times that I was partway through the interview process and was being asked to come back in. I said, nope, don't want to do it. This isn't the right thing. So you really have to ask them, why is that position open? Go and find out. Well, it's because something happened. We fired this guy, and and we fired the guy before that, and everything is like, okay, don't want to be the chief scapegoat officer. Not a good fit. Tell me about the company's existing security framework. There's no right or wrong on that. Again, depending on where you're going, if you're going into a retail thing, I'd pretty much say, rest assured, they're going to be basing most of the stuff off PCI DSS. But it's interesting. And sometimes to find out, well, we don't have one. Okay, then make sure that you're going to be able to establish it yourself. That is how it happened at Honda Aircraft. They did not have one in place because it was up before December of 2015. It was just an R&D organization. They didn't have any requirements. And then all of a sudden in December, when the FAA approval of selling the jet, it's like, well, Pinocchio's a real boy now. You've got to start acting like a real company. And that was the stuff I kind of came in and did. It's like, all right, what do we need? I chose to make our framework based on ISO. My personal preference would have been NIST cybersecurity framework. I just personally think that's a little bit better, but you have to know your audience. And with ours, it being a Japanese company, they love ISO. So it's like, okay, no big deal. You can always pretty much map all the ISO controls to NIST, and it wasn't that big of a deal. So that's what we went to. Who would I be reporting to? I think this is the most important one because that's where I turned down one of the jobs that kind of surprised me when I got there. Went through it and they did the whole thing. It's like, yes, and you'll be reporting to the infrastructure director. What? Can you say conflict of interest? I thought you could. No, you cannot do that. I would really say that for any job as the head of cybersecurity, you cannot be more than 2 steps away from the CEO. It's if you are buried under too much bureaucracy on that, your voice will not be heard. You're just there for a checkbox, just so they can say they have one, and you will be miserable. And even sometimes, it's better to report to the CEO. I'm happy that I don't on that. I have my buffer. But it's, and again, we have a great structure. I have the ability to speak to our CEO on my own. It's not, he doesn't, my CIO does not have that level of ego that he'd get bothered by that. He and I work together very well on this stuff. What's the size of the staff? And describe the corporate culture. You really do have to understand what's going in before you can do that. So anyway, you go through all that fun stuff and you got the job. Well, now what do you do? And a lot of it is like, are you the first CISO? And I bring that up because that's a whole different set of rules. And all I can really do is explain how I tried to do it when I went through mine, as I explained with Honda Aircraft. And when doing that, you have to look at it as I went into a 3-year program on that. As I always brought into it, I said, look, within the first year, I'm just going to try and introduce cybersecurity because it wasn't there before. You're looking at things from there is trying to find out where your big gaps are. You know, for us, it's we needed a DOP system in place. We needed a SIM. They didn't have one at the time. We needed to determine the framework. I needed to get an incident response plan in place. So those sort of things. By the time we got around to the year 2, everyone understands what security is. Now let's implement it. Let's get some things a little more in place. Let's get our testing in place. Let's get our training up and running onto that. Let's get everyone to where it started to be, you know, all this stuff is in place now and we're getting our technology up to speed where it should be. And by the time you get to the 3rd year, it was the integration. Have it totally integrated within the company as part of it within your security within your application development teams, getting risk management set up, getting some better staffing put in, looking at things like encryption, like advanced access management, multi-factor authentication, those sort of things. Now, on the other hand, as you go in, and where probably most of it's going to be by the time maybe you get there is, all right, I'm replacing somebody, whether it was my boss that I had there, or I've gone to another company because there was an opening there and there's a chance to move up in that regard. You really need to look at some of the stuff there as a 30, 60, 90-day objectives. And really within your first 30 days, read, talk, study. That's all there is to it. Look at all the current InfoSec policies and procedures and understand it. Look at your strategic plans from your IT side and for the InfoSec and what's already there. Maybe you don't agree with it. As you're doing it then, fine. Make sure as you're reading that you're building up a case for why it needs to be changed. Meet with all your individual stakeholders. I mean, everyone on the senior leadership team. Introduce yourself, go be able to talk to them. If you have somebody if you like reporting to the CIO and says he doesn't want you doing that, please talk him into it. It is very important. Review all your most recent audits. Understand what the auditors, whether it's internal or external, what they think of the stuff, where they see the problems are. Look through any recent presentations to the board of directors or your senior management. And then really do an assessment of your own infrastructure on that and see where you're going on. Biggest thing, avoid as you go into the thing, don't be the prophet of doom. Don't be doing everything of, you know, that we have to get this or we're all going to die. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe you are in really bad shape, but if that is the way you try and lead with, if that's the only thing you have in your gun, you're not going to have a very happy career there. So within this first 60 days, what are you trying to do? You understand some of the things there now, start developing up your departmental skill matrix. Get a gap in assessment, understand where you need to be to get to there. Create a training roadmap, not just for your staff, but also for the entire IS department. We try and do security awareness training for managers. Try and do security awareness and for your people that have high-level access to privileged information. Go take a survey of your SOC and your NOC. Have multiple data centers, go visit all of them. And finally, you know, conduct some more assessments. Do your framework gap analysis, independent of other prior assessments. You know, and I would honestly, I'm recommending something like that is to do an assessment without ever reading a previous one on that. Just so, and then afterwards you can read it and see, okay, how does mine line up with theirs? And if there are differences on there, why? Did something change between there, or whether someone just looking at things or prioritizing something differently, and understand what that's going on? And also do a third-party risk assessments. You know, how's your cloud structure going? Do you have contractors? Do you have vendors that are handling some of your critical data? Doing a gap analysis of them. Do they read their SOC 2 reports? Doing the on-site visit if they're that high of a level. Build your teams up more than anything else. Get your internal teams, cross-functional teams together so you have a consensus and you have it being addressed in all areas. And then finally, you know, after your first 90 days, draft up a detailed threat assessment. Socialize, you know, vulnerability roadmap. socialize and refine the roadmap and assessments, look through your BCP, DRP, and the most recent business impact analysis, and then determine your first fix. Find the low-hanging fruit and get a quick win. In the case of Honda, to me, that one was I was going in within 90 days, I developed a patch management process. We were a little bit slack in that, and so were some of the others. So it's like, yeah, that one ain't big deal. We were able to start patching everything every 30 days. And when Honda corporate got hit with WannaCry in 2017, and it started jumping all around the world and everything, it did not jump to Honda aircraft. And even if it had, what stopped it was having those things patched. So it was a big win. It helped me a lot with my budget, helped me a lot with credibility. So, okay, you're through your first 6 months, you got it, you got everything up and running. Now it's just on autopilot. You can just relax from that point forward. And please let me know how that works out for you. Everything from that point forward is lather, rinse, repeat. What's your next threat? What's your next project? Coming in, everything changes. I told my CIO once, it's like, look, in reality, what's kind of accepted in cybersecurity is what you know right now is going to be totally irrelevant in 5 years, maybe sometimes now every 3. So you just got to keep learning. You just got to keep handling all the problems and go through that. So, and it's kind of the point even with some of the things there. Once you get a lot of your technology in place, I know everyone's like, oh, just solve everything with technology. Not really. I go into a lot of my budgets right now, my budget meetings and my strategic plans, because someone's saying, hey, what do you want security to be in 5 years? I have no idea. I'll be somewhere on a beach sipping some cocktails out with an umbrella in it. But whoever's there left, they don't know either. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to support the organization. I'm going to ensure that all of our technology, all of our products and processes are protected from cyber threats. I don't know how yet. I know how it is right now. We'll see how it goes, but whatever it is, we're going to adapt and we're going to go with it. And as always, the bottom line is be ready to drop all plans and routines when something breaks. Basically, you're going to be a CISO. Keep calm, do the right thing, and CYA. And by that, I'm not necessarily meaning it in a selfish manner to say, put blame somewhere else. Don't. You're still going to accept the stuff, but be able to understand and talk through when something happens, talk about what failed. You've got to be able to protect 100 different things. Bad guys only have to be able to find one of them that's a little weak. So be able to work out and be able to handle that and handle it calmly, because really this job is herding cats and it's a lot of fun. It is the most rewarding job I've ever had in my life. After 35 years of doing IT, I was getting a little burnout in some of the stuff on the regular IT management. And this is something that it's new and unique every day. And it is, I say the perfect career for me, because I have ADHD and I'm paranoid, and that just works perfectly with that. So again, when you're there, yes, Chief, I'm the scapegoat officer, and I'm okay with that. So from that point, I'll let Evelyn stop the recording on that. And if there are any